Wow. Um, what am I about? And I have seen yesterday in that fantastic seminar, webinar in New York. I hope some of you have followed that as well. With small shopkeepers, which is organized by Ellen Lewis, who has a fantastic newsletter and a blog, and is a real specialist. And I understood a couple of things very, very well. And in a certain way, this presentation is all about it. That has to do with our changing mindset. And mindfulness is not like a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, use it as to improve productivity, but actually to redefine ourselves. And that is very, very important at this moment. I think the second word I want to use today, and that is certainly after that came very, very, very strongly over yesterday in that seminar of Curve as well, is passion. Passion is something that is transcending over this new media, that is transcending also very, very strongly over virtual contact, and especially seeing people who can talk about how they do their job is quite fantastic. I also this morning, I read in a newsletter from Mary Portas. I don't know whether you all know Mary Portas. She is a UK retail guru. And she believes that building a community will be the future, also of brick and mortar. And what I especially liked was she talks about a new type of retail, and she calls it relation shops. And that is a sort of community where the virtual and the physical go together, and where communities transcend geography. I think that is very, very important also in this world when we talk about fairs, and fairs, especially Interfilière, who is the host here. That's an incredible important part of the philosophy that I adhere enormously, is that community spirit. And I want to start directly with something which is incredibly important. That is a message we have sent a couple of weeks ago already, a message which is about creative. We call it creative awakening. We feel very, very strong that everybody who is a creator is talking about it, and we would like to invite creative people to send us something what is in this enormous change of times, an expression of what they believe in. It is, we are asking for A3 that has a technical reason, a piece of paper, a text, a prototype, whatever you want to do. In the most ideal situation, we will end up with a real fair. If it's not a real fair, we will communicate it anyway. There are all kinds of developments and we can use to and in a certain way to make sure that we feel together, and that is that spirit of community is very strongly part of the way we go forward. Because we believe that emotional connections, a dynamic interaction between humans, and how that goes, that kind of different way. But there's also an element where nature comes in, and I have seen the last couple of weeks that nature element is developing very, very strongly. There is almost a militant movement now from a consumer point of view, helped by very clever journalists, where especially the textile role in the pollution of this world is discussed in all different ways. These are my empowered ladies. And one of the messages I want to bring here in this presentation is the revolutionary power of diverse thoughts. There is a tendency at the moment to say we all go back to simplicity, as little as possible, simple. But you know, that is, for me, that is typical the language of demagogues. They want it to be easy to be controlled. But the reality of this society and of this world is diversity. And you have seen all how successful Rihanna has been with Savage and Fenty, expressing all those different thoughts, all those different bodies. On top of that, we want to empower plurality, but we also want to certainly believe that designers play a major, major role in in sustainability. It's not so much that they have to completely believe that tomorrow we can make a totally sustainable bra or a product, but the way that sustainability is understood, and that is especially strong in a recent article of the BBC, which I also shared with everybody on LinkedIn, that is sustainability possible at all in textiles? So the question is, how big is the role the consumer is playing? And that is very much where the designer is coming in. We need to design garments which are purposeful, but they need to be with charm and with fantasy.
Excuse me, Jos, can you just, your head is cut, so can you go back? Okay. Yes, that's better. Fantastic.
We talk about, I thought my slides are more important.
Yes, of course.
We talk about the purpose economy, and we especially call for structural change. Now, that's already happening. It's very painful. I don't want to go too deep in it, but it will affect us all, how we communicate, how we design. The spirit of creation will become the major, major attribute for new design, and especially in lingerie. And that is what we are preparing now in the weeks to come. In lingerie, that is quite something. It is very, very long to make something new. And when the moment we are talking about a new society with a new spirit, with a new awareness of technology and sustainability, we absolutely have to have time to do that. So we are, in the next coming weeks, we are preparing all kind of seminar where we will discuss together with the fabric industry how we can rediscover and redevelop the value of garments, especially in its longevity and in its multiple wear. And we are looking for connections. We're looking for connections because connections are incredibly important. I'm at this moment a big believer also in following all those women on TED. I don't know how many of you are enthusiastic TED followers as well, but I'm very enthusiastic. And I saw a fantastic TED seminar by Amy Tan, who talked about creativity and where is creativity coming from? And the bottom line in her is it's connections. Everything is connected. A real creative person cannot stop itself in seeing the connections and being inspired by the connections. It's very often also in times like today, the ambiguity. Things are both fantastic, perhaps in possibilities, but also very painful. The buzzwords which we continue, they stay: inclusivity, empowerment, body positive, and the implications for design. And I'm going to take you, and that is where we
sorry, your slide is not moving. Is it normal? We are still in the first page.
But where are you now?
The first page too.
Oh, that is interesting. How is that possible?
I don't know.
Not moving at all?
No, for the moment, no.
Oh God, what a misery. I can't do much more about that than bringing you back to.
It's okay.
Bringing you back to a smaller screen.
Well, no, it's okay. It's working when you moved.
We have to do something. Hold on, I will bring you back to.
Yes.
So you are completely behind. I was halfway my presentation already. You almost could go home. And so here we go again. So I took you to this. So you have missed this, or not? Because this is the invitation to all designers to send us something creative. It can be technical, it can be a sketch, it can be a text that we can use in the best way on the fair in September. And if it is not possible because we don't know how the developments are, we will communicate it in another way. This is a fantastic opportunity to develop this, what I talked about, this community spirit, which is more and more important also in relationship with our new mindsets, and also in relationship with this important new society, and in relationship certainly with the fair. So there you miss my ladies, and these are very important ladies. The revolutionary power of diverse thoughts, especially where we see a very sharp pre-pandemic moment already in our lingerie lives, the controversy between Victoria's Secret and their sexy women, and Rihanna with her Fenty collection, Savage and Fenty. The idea that diversity is one of the most important elements of our times. And I do not, and I will not, and I said that before, I will not believe into back to simplicity, because simplicity has no place in these very complicated times we live in. We talk about a new purpose economy, a call for structural change. The spirit of creation and the rediscovery of value is a very important part of our next webinars, which I hope are technically a little bit better than what we here concoct. But the spirit of creation is a question of a combination of factors, and certainly the fabric industry is then our biggest partner in developing new values which are focused on wearer comfort, but also on longevity. The buzzwords going forward in whatever we do in our design, and when you are talking and you are thinking as a creative person about your role to create something very diverse, very pluriform, then to continue to believe in anecdotal trends is a little bit difficult. But however, there are rules, there are touchstones, there are parameters to follow. And in this presentation, the mindsets, these are typical what we studied, clusters where we know that everybody in this modern world feels a connection with, and that is a sort of platform for all kinds of new interpretations, personal, creative, and very unique. Body positive is also, and inclusivity is not only a question of bigger sizes. We also see in this market big developments for very small sizes, but also big developments for in regards to what we call the baby boomers, the older consumer. Our first mindset we call utilitarian refinement, and actually it's not simplicity coming back. It's actually that a wardrobe which is very much based on natural fibers, or new natural fibers of a regard to nature. Wardrobe we basically still do not have. We talk about it, everybody talks about minimalism, but here we are talking about garments that are attractive and versatile, that adapt to the saving attitude of the bioeconomy. So we absolutely see this as a very, very strong part also of that home leisure collection. Somebody said to me today, I went to the shops, that was somebody in Milano, called me and said, I went to the shops, I saw all those shoes in the shops, and I thought it's almost a travel in the past. But I do with all those shoes? I don't want them anymore. My life has changed now. That probably will refocus a little bit. But it's quite true that a lot of people have thought about how comfort and comfort creatures, how important they are in the world going forward. During this crisis, we have seen that health issues preoccupy the world enormously. We see dividing lines between cossetry and sport brands fade, and there is an enormous important development happening both for the fabric industry and for the garment makers, is to study why is sport garments and the sport bra so incredibly popular. We have seen new developments from Triumph. We also have seen that in regards with the changing morphology, that what sport brands have most of the time a very limited size range. A lot of corsetry brands are enormously worried about the growing size ranges which this very diverse world demands. The most important part, however, is that the only way to survive is to fall in love with yourself, to love everything you do, and it is not so strange that yoga, gym. Yesterday, you know her all, Jenny Wiggum. I called her. I had a meeting with her, and she was doing her bar exercises, not bra exercises. And so the combination of influences from dance or interest, which are very much about graciousness, that is also coming in to this world of simplicity. But what is also very interesting in our world, and how does that fit into lingerie? Certainly in the combination of close to the body and very big. There is an enormous development of make it yourself. Perhaps not everybody is retaking their cutting needles, but a lot of people have started to, also with the regard of how to repair garments, to take this very, very seriously. Even my own granddaughter, I was completely amazed that she was suddenly making her old t-shirts into new patchwork t-shirts. The idea of saving money and doing it by hand is reevaluated dramatically. For lingerie, it means also looking after recycling, but recycling in a new way. Here, that shawl in the middle is from a factory it's called De Mills. It's a mini factory in an old factory building where they study and experiment with recycling of and ask the population to bring their old t-shirts, and you can see who that then is recycled into new yarn, and that new yarn is then knitted into all kinds of interesting garments. We see that in the recycling industry, the role of cotton and wool is also enormously important, because we are starting to read more and more about these question marks about recycling of polyester, for instance, which is at a certain moment goes into the ground still as polyester. The color impact. I read it was a very interesting writer from Hungary who is writing words that have a color. She believes that in our society we are more and more away from the soothing effect of colors, but we have already discovered that when we did research during the confinement, that one of the things people immediately say if you said, what would you buy or what would you do when you come out of it, is buying color. They are very, 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 very close to believing that comfort, beautiful feeling of happiness is related to comfort. In the season going forward, we see that pink is ongoingly important, also in the new color card for summer 2022, which we just together with a group of people decided for Interfilière. Comfort home leisure, as it is now called, in pieces which are very roomy, which are redressing every age and size, from in to outside wardrobe, that have sustainable cuddle value. We see this development of a sort of multiple wear. on every level, even in sport, where one of my friends is talking about collections for on the court and off the court, and a very important part of our wardrobe we see will develop in something that is multifunctional, but also fibers, and that is where you certainly want to talk with real specialists. I mean, I hope on a very very soon occasion to bring together the real specialists in textile sustainability. I mentioned people like Giusy Bettoni, Janet Seltzer, Azie Efros is a very good example. Susanne Kulben there are women who know so much, and they also are quite critical. But what we have seen now already is that fibers and the way they are blended and what you use, they can also help you to have a better life. So we see that also, that whole sleep smart development. There's a brand in a Swiss Scandinavian brand, Dax Mejan, which is making a new generation of eco-knits with sleep enhancing properties, and sleep will be very important. The first webinar after this one with the fabric industry will about this subject, botanical nostalgia. Never in history have I seen such an enormous fluidity in taste and a fluidity in gender in regards to flowers. Flowers always were something for dresses. Now we see flowers everywhere. Flowers are also a very, very strong and a very beautiful reminder from nature that everything is connected, from insects to color, to what you eat, to how you react, to how your mindset is changing. Flowers are incredibly important. We also see, for instance, you have seen that all over the world, flower shops and restaurants, which is suddenly coming together. I know one very famous, Potafiori in Milano, an absolute must to go. Fantastic combination of nature at its best, nature at its most tasty, nature at its also as its most inspirational. And we see at the same time an enormous comeback of flower pattern. Here am I with my dog in the garden. This is typical where home leisure is coming in, where we see that we have concentrated on jogging trousers and t-shirts and leggings, but we now see a very, very big market developing with designers such as La Double G. You have heard, of course, of Natori with her big successes and a beautiful prints. There is for restless sleepers. There's a very famous collection of Zimmermann dresses, dress type garments, and everything based on prints. I see an enormous developing of print designs, certainly with all our new technology, which are water saving. The symbols of flowers are touching everything, and we see that even in sport, flower patterns arrive. It is certainly also one of the major elements for laces. But we also see that dividing line between lacy. Flowery laces are for classic garments, because for sport we don't use flowers, also disappearing. And we see also crosses over, like with a cycling short there, which is a new way, a lace biker short instead of a step in or a gain. And although it is hardly possible after I don't know how the weather was in the rest of the world, but here in Europe, we had a month of April, which is unbelievable, summery, beautiful, beautiful. But summer will arrive, and this summer we will be growing need for really beautiful, beautiful spring-like garments, because we missed spring. How are we going to deal with that? Certainly multi-wear lounge dresses, delightful colors, a beautiful light mismatch of flower patterns and laces, creating exciting tensions and combinations of different techniques. Again, I would like to remind you, these are just inspirations. We know for sure that flowers and interesting flower embroideries, like here from Union Singalan or Oriental embroidery, with completely new technologies, are extraordinarily successful at the moment. We see an enormous comeback of floral embroideries. But there's also something that has stopped for a lot of years, people using print designs, and that was because of the enormous quantities they had to buy. You see, especially that young designers stopped actually trying to find printed materials, and that happened also for a big part with embroideries. Apart from what you see here with Victor and Rolf, who uses patchwork of all kinds of rest, we see that most of the European fabric industry is now prepared to work with smaller quantities, and there are even manufacturers of very high up qualities like Letissage Perrin, who allow people to buy from their stocks. And I can guarantee you, I've seen it, those stocks are amazing, and for designers, a fantastic way to go forward. And when we talk then about fabrics, and about those beautiful fabrics from the past, we see an enormous comeback from Como silks and the typical Lyonese qualities. There are still more people in Como left over than in Lyon. That is sadly enough, but these are symbols of qualities people would like to keep for the rest of their life. They mix and match, and that idea of a wardrobe, or of a wardrobe that keeps its value, that is starting also to hit in lingerie, and certainly with things like home leisure. Another mindset, and typically connected, although we already developed it pre-COVID, but the enormous importance of other cultures. We see this, that there is no boundaries for graphical impressions, and especially in lingerie, it is discovered by a whole range of new young designers, very, very artsy and crafty geometric patterns. We talk here a lot about a whole new generation of designers, and those designers are for a big part all over the world. They are not so big, they are but very successful, and give you a couple of names. There is Nette Rose in South Africa, there is in New Zealand Lonely Lingerie, there's Livy in France, there is Mila Krashna from Slovenia, and especially, to mention, when it comes to very artistic, very, very graphical use of design as well, I want to also mention DSTM from Berlin, a totally new generation of lingerie manufacturers of designers who are looking at different elements. We call her the collector. These are people who collect strong impressions, and if you look very carefully, then you know that the enormous success of Zimmermann and La Double G and Ries van Noten is typical because these garments, and very often print designs, they hold their value for a very long time. So we see that internationally, that this idea of the collector's wardrobe, of beautiful pieces you keep and you add elements, and that will be certainly part of our sustainable wardrobe. It can be very flowery, it can be very very ethnic, and we also look more and more about art to wear. It was also helping us to to survive our isolation. It was a sort of manna for the soul. We saw these observations already for a couple of seasons, but now this takes a new importance. Communicate with us. We see, especially with the coming beachwear seasons, that this print idea, this going away from the obvious, together with sustainable basic fabrics, and for they're basically all the beachwear specialists like Carvico and Eurojersey, and I should not forget Sophie Letta, of course, in France, the most fantastic basis for prints in the beachwear industry. They're all quite aware of their sustainability and water saving properties. That home leisure collection, that new wardrobe, I think we in lingerie should pay much more attention to that, because it's developing around us. When is a robe only for the morning when you come out of bed, and when is it something you can also wear in the street? It's a question of design. It's a question of the choice of fabric, the choice of colors, not so much of the shapes, because it's quite interesting to see that we have a couple of industries which are parallel to each other, but who basically make the same type of fabrics, but call themselves a different sector. We will see that is disappearing, because we cannot have this amount of production overcapacity. So one of the most important developments, of course, here is our endless discussions about cotton, and we see more and more that we now see that things like Naya, Cupro is starting to play an enormous role. Alternatives, but also all kind of new fibers with cottony type of handles, made from ananas, made from the most incredible leftover plants and vegetables, and there is a whole vegetable development coming towards us. And after this crisis, I'm pretty sure that there was women who shouted to us before the crisis about body positive, about inclusivity, that she will pick up her warrior spirit even more than before. She will want to have, she will ask for size inclusivity, and she will also ask us to buy less, buy better, and more sustainable. And that, of course, is a fantastic development possible for a new wardrobe, but also, and that is the fabric industry is basically ready for that. It demands that we change our mindsets. What kind of shops are selling this? How do we sell that? Where do we find it? What are the price points? What are the qualities? It needs to be practical. It needs to be easy to care. It needs to be very, very, very multifunctional. This multifunctionality, we see that for a big part also as the basis for development in laces. We have in the lace industry, we have seen before the crisis a fantastic ruin happening, with prices which were slashed to an all-time low, under $1 per yard at a certain moment for the most beautiful laces. And that went together with a tumbling down of quality. The whole lace industry, including the machine builders like Karl is ready to make laces that are so multifunctional, where combinations of recycled yarns, of multi-stretch, of engineering, all allow us to make the most seductive sculpting garments. And this lace role is, of course, most important in something which I called an other mindset. Not over. Do not believe anybody who says now the lingerie of the future is simple. We absolutely do not believe in corsetry anymore. Corsetry is part of this wardrobe of diversity. It's part of our secret pleasure drawers. It is part of the history of lingerie, and we see that the more our liberty and the disappearance of dress code, the more this sort of lacy, seductive is also chic and relaxed with the Parisian touch. Paris, of course, remains the center and the inspiration of sexy lingerie, and that will not change. And although you remember all the names I mentioned and from which different countries they come, I mean, the most creative lingerie who could ever has imagined that comes from all the corners of the world. And for this kind of lingerie, which we see here, for instance, one of the absolute trendsetters, completely there, making the most incredible city-ready lacy garments, is a company that is called Entos and comes from Mexico. We are talking, but that the inspiration that remains French and coming from Paris, and we see that especially young designers continue to be absolutely totally in love with this kind of typical leaves look laces. Leaves look laces, which are now more often than in the leading collections, combined with very sporty details. Elastic plays an enormous role here to give it just that little contemporary sporty element like label, elastics, and leaves laces. The new generations of designers combine sport influences with graphic lace and clean graphical trimmings. And that is a trend which can be interpreted for all ages and all different ways. We're talking about a world where the casual attitudes, and the casual attitudes especially in regards to multi-wear, will continue in a big way. And what is so adorable is that lace, especially lace, plays an enormous role. Look at Celia there. That's Celia with her gold pen, and she is my chief designer. We were having a ball at recent fabric fairs, because normally a lot of those lace manufacturers come also from all corners of the world. And I want to mention Encares, Luna, Gayu, Lila, lots of them out of Turkey. An enormous wealth of ideas, and also possible, very often prepared in the future to sell smaller quantities. The typical erotic look, which was also very bondage, is now meeting modern technology. That is where I mentioned the brand DSTM from Berlin, which also completely fits in here, a sort of graphical take on design, strong, loved by this woman who continue to find a place in her wardrobe for sexy lingerie. And after COVID-19, we are going to celebrate every festive moment in our life, and we see that certainly bridal and bridal garments will become very, very important, and certainly the presentation of it. In our modern world with fantastic technology, we also see that frill and smock and all kind of almost old-fashioned finished technology are coming back. I just finished with a whole group of lingerie designers the concertation for the ideas for Summer 22, and this was basically the most proposed direction of everybody. All those young women in fashion, they proposed something which we almost have said that doesn't have a place in our life anymore. There's an enormous longing for it, and it's possible because most of the modern fabrics are free cut, are very, very easy to wear. They're very easy to care for. They're beautiful light weights in wovens, and also in a very fine denier knits. The last one. we are absolutely sure that modern technology and the price we have to pay for garments which are basically can do everything is something which the lingerie industry is perhaps a little bit late with compared to the sport industry. Look at the success of Lululemon and look also at the success of those sport manufacturers who use a different language. I believe strongly that the combination of language and this idea of being free to move is a very, very important part missing in the lingerie industry. We see a big technology coming towards us, what I mentioned before, where nature actually meets high technology, where a lot of those modern new fibers are actually having their basis in all kind of nature plants and plant type developments. And one of the biggest pushes at the moment is hemp. So we are very close to marijuana here, but hemp is considered as being one of the most obvious materials to use for the future. So technical technique meets nature, a very important way forward, especially in this development of smooth innovation. And here you have it from Evelyn and Bobby, which believes that that everything a woman would like to wear is without wires and without padding and pure technology with bonding, bonding and free cutting. In that same mind of that woman is placed for very sexy, and we should not polarize. We should accept that this pluriformity is one of the most obvious chances for the lingerie industry to go forward. We talk here about very innovative shapes, where the crossover between the garment, the role of the fabric, how the designer cuts it is very, very, very important. And we see then that designers actually become completely actually become the masters of how we are going forward. We talked a couple of weeks ago. There was a webinar together with Angie Lau and Sian Thomas from Triumph, and we discovered very much that in lingerie, much less than in sport, designers, garment designers and fabric designers and makers sit together. In sport, that is quite normal, that the whole engineering of a garment is a collaborative effort, and we will certainly see that is going to happen as well in lingerie. We talk there women for women, because a very important way forward. The sport element is also dominant in the way accessories develop. We see more and more silicone and very, very innovative materials being used, very often also completely sustainable for buckles and little details, and certainly from a look point of view, a lovely way to update lingerie. Most important, however, probably in all sectors, in all the mindset, that's the most important element to solve is the size dilemma, because a lot of brands already complain that they cannot go forward in proposing so many sizes, and also for shopkeepers is impossible. And there again, the role of fabric is enormous. Triumph started with the Fit Smart range together with Pen TS, a very, very, very clever collaboration of engineering, of 3D stretch plus garment technology, which meant that they only now sell 4 sizes. So this is also the case with, for instance, Sims by Kardashian, a multi-billion industry. Somebody said you don't believe in shapewear anymore. Yes, I do. I do believe in shapewear, which is almost part of everybody's wardrobe, but is it called shapewear? That is my whole question. Or is it just one of those fantastic layers you can wear to the beach, you can wear as a t-shirt, multifunctional, instead of just precise one classification? Innovative laces and jacquards are very much engineered for functional zone comfort, because in the future we will talk about versatile seduction, seductive but also very practical, where knit engineering is playing an enormous role, and that bridges the dividing line between activewear and lingerie. An enormous, beautiful collection. I saw yesterday pictures of Fendi, absolutely fantastic. A good example of also the comeback of seam-free garments, that whole what we call the hosiery technology, absolutely something to follow and to invest in. We are almost at the end. I think the most important element to go forward after this crisis, or with the crisis still lingering on, that is even more likely, is to continue to be innovative and to take the time, which is one of the good elements of this period, to be passionate about the relevance that moves with the moment and absolutely not with the season. But before you leave, a message from Urwet, from the Interfilière. Most what I told you here is available now in an evolution guide. Damien, who you also saw, is your contact there, and we just finished the colors for summer 22. That could be also pre-ordered. I thank you very, very much. If you have any questions, shoot. Sorry for all